Logan Paul thought he had built the next billion-dollar empire. Prime was supposed to be his golden ticket to joining the ranks of ultra-wealthy entrepreneurs, with dreams of being acquired by Coca-Cola or Pepsi. But today, you can find cases of Prime gathering dust on Walmart clearance shelves for under $5. The hydration beverage that once caused frenzies at convenience stores and made headlines worldwide has become the poster child for how quickly a viral brand can collapse. U.S. sales fell by over 50% in the first half of 2024 alone. What happened to Logan's billionaire dreams, and how did Prime go from phenomenon to failure? The answer starts with understanding exactly what Logan was trying to build.
$60 billion. I was 8 years old. I thought of the most brilliant idea ever.
Logan Paul never made it a secret what he was after. He wanted to become a billionaire, and he saw Prime as his fastest route to get there. This wasn't some casual business venture or side project. For Logan, Prime represented the vehicle that would transform him from a wealthy YouTuber into a member of the ultra-rich elite. He talked about it constantly, making it clear that hitting that billion-dollar mark was his ultimate life goal. KSI, his co-founder, was equally invested in this vision, sharing the same ambitious financial targets that would define their partnership's success. The strategy was actually pretty straightforward when you break it down. Logan and KSI planned to build Prime into a legitimate competitor against the giants like Gatorade and Powerade. They weren't trying to stay small or carve out some niche market. The goal was to grab enough market share to make Coca-Cola or Pepsi take notice and come knocking with acquisition offers. This was the exact playbook that Body Armor had used successfully, taking 7 years of steady growth before Coca-Cola finally made their move with a massive partnership deal. For Logan to reach his billionaire dreams, the math was simple but demanding. With his ownership stake around 20% of Prime, the company would need to sell for around $5 billion to put him in that exclusive club. That's not pocket change we're talking about. That level of acquisition would require Prime to prove it could consistently compete with established brands and maintain serious market penetration across multiple demographics and regions. The initial hype machine that Logan and KSI created was unlike anything the beverage industry had seen before. These weren't traditional marketing campaigns with focus groups and demographic studies. Instead, they used their combined social media reach of hundreds of millions of followers to create instant demand. Every post, every video, every appearance became a Prime advertisement. They turned product launches into events, with fans lining up at stores and creating genuine scarcity in markets like the UK. This scarcity wasn't accidental. Logan and KSI deliberately limited supply in certain markets, which created underground resale markets where individual bottles sold for multiples of their retail price. They even sparked a second-hand market in UK schools, with bottles reselling for multiples of retail price. Kids were trading Prime bottles like rare collectibles. Adults were driving to multiple stores looking for specific flavors. The brand had achieved something that traditional beverage companies spend decades trying to build: cultural relevance and genuine consumer obsession. Logan took the personal branding approach to extremes that most CEOs would never consider. He integrated Prime into every aspect of his public life. When his wife got pregnant, he found ways to work Prime into those announcements. When he launched other products like Lunchly, Prime was always featured prominently. Every milestone, every personal moment, every business venture became an opportunity to reinforce Prime's presence in his audience's minds. But here's where the fundamental flaw in their billion-dollar blueprint started to show. Prime was never really built to stand on its own merits as a beverage. The entire brand identity was wrapped up in Logan Paul and KSI's personalities. Unlike Body Armor, which had developed a reputation for quality and performance independent of any single spokesperson, Prime's value proposition was essentially, drink what Logan and KSI drink. This made the brand incredibly vulnerable to shifts in public opinion about its founders. The beverage giants initially showed interest because Prime had accomplished something impressive. It had disrupted a mature market and captured significant mindshare among younger consumers. Companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi understood that Prime represented access to demographics that traditional sports drinks struggled to reach. The social media buzz and sales numbers in those early months suggested Prime might actually have the staying power to justify a major acquisition. However, the same influencer-driven strategy that created Prime's initial success was about to become its biggest weakness. Building a brand entirely on hype and personality meant that when reality hit, the financial results would tell a very different story. The financial reports revealed numbers that weren't just disappointing, they were catastrophic. In the UK market alone, Prime's profits crashed by 90% from $3 million down to $300,000, while revenue plummeted from $112.2 million to $32.8 million. in a single year. That's not a gradual decline or seasonal dip. That's a brand in complete free fall. The devastation wasn't limited to the UK either. Across the United States, Prime's sales dropped by over 50% in just the first half of 2024. This wasn't some regional hiccup or marketing miscalculation. Prime had become one of the steepest declines among fast-moving consumer goods, according to industry trackers. Companies that monitor consumer brands were watching Prime's collapse like it was a case study in how quickly a viral product could crater. When pressed about these horrific numbers, Prime representatives tried to spin the disaster as a natural occurring phenomena, claiming this was just the expected outcome after the initial hype bubble burst. But this explanation didn't match up with Logan Paul's repeated statements about building a billion-dollar legacy brand targeting acquisition offers from Coca-Cola. The real problem became obvious when you looked at what Prime had done to their own market. They had flooded stores with an absurd number of flavors and product variations. What started as a carefully controlled scarcity strategy turned into a tsunami of Prime products hitting every shelf possible. Convenience stores, grocery chains, gas stations, everywhere you looked, there were rows and rows of Prime bottles in dozens of different flavors that most people had never heard of. This oversaturation killed the very thing that made Prime special in the first place. When Prime was hard to find, people wanted it more. When it was everywhere, it became just another hydration drink competing with hundreds of other options. Even the loyal customers who had been buying Prime religiously started purchasing less. The data showed that individual consumers weren't just buying Prime less frequently, they were buying smaller quantities when they did buy it. The shift from scarcity to abundance destroyed Prime's premium perception almost overnight. The same product that people used to hunt down in multiple stores was now sitting untouched on shelves everywhere. Retailers started marking it down just to move inventory. And that's when the psychological death spiral really kicked in. Once Prime started showing up on clearance racks, consumer psychology took over. People saw those discounted prices and immediately assumed something was wrong with the product. Why would a premium hydration drink be marked down so heavily unless nobody wanted it? The clearance rack placement became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more stores that put Prime on clearance, the more consumers assumed the brand was failing, which made even fewer people want to buy it at full price. But the core issue went deeper than oversupply or pricing strategies. Prime had made a critical mistake that's almost impossible to recover from. They never established an identity beyond Logan Paul and KSI's personalities. When those early customers got tired of the YouTube drama or moved on to other influencers, Prime had nothing to offer them. Unlike successful beverage brands that build loyalty through taste, performance, or lifestyle association, Prime's entire value proposition was, this is what Logan and KSI drink. The brand that was supposed to become Logan's billion-dollar legacy had become entirely dependent on maintaining the same level of hype and social media buzz that launched it. But the public sales collapse was only the beginning of Prime's problems. Behind the scenes, an even more damaging story was unfolding through a $67 million lawsuit that exposed Prime's manufacturing disaster. Refresco Bottling Company filed this massive legal action against Prime after the brand allegedly backed out of manufacturing agreements when they realized they couldn't meet production quotas. They'd committed to produce volumes they couldn't sell, triggering penalties that revealed just how panicked Prime's leadership had become about their declining prospects. The details of this manufacturing fiasco tell the real story of Prime's overconfident expansion plans. When Prime was riding high on early success, they locked themselves into massive production contracts with Refresco, expecting demand to keep climbing indefinitely. These manufacturing deals typically require companies to commit to producing specific quantities of product with significant financial penalties if they fail to meet those quotas. Prime apparently signed these contracts during their peak hype period, assuming the viral momentum would translate into sustained sales growth. But when reality hit and sales started cratering, Prime found themselves facing a nightmare scenario. They were contractually obligated to produce millions of bottles that they knew they couldn't sell. Rather than honoring their commitments and eating the financial losses, Prime allegedly tried to back out of the deal entirely. Refresco wasn't having it, and the $67 million lawsuit represents their attempt to recover the money they expected to make from fulfilling Prime's original manufacturing orders. This reckless approach stood in stark contrast to how successful beverage brands actually build sustainable businesses. Body Armor spent 7 years methodically growing before Coca-Cola's initial 15% investment, then doubled their sales with proper strategic support. Prime had tried to scale up production based on viral social media moments rather than proven sustainable demand. Prime's growth strategy had become their biggest weakness. They had prioritized rapid expansion over building a stable foundation, and when the hype faded, they discovered they had committed to production levels they couldn't support. The Refresco lawsuit created a domino effect that made Prime's situation even worse. As their sales declined, they couldn't meet manufacturing commitments, which led to legal battles that drained resources and created negative publicity. Every dollar spent fighting lawsuits was a dollar not spent on marketing, product development, or trying to rebuild consumer interest. More importantly, this legal mess scared away potential acquirers who might have otherwise considered Prime, despite their declining sales. When major beverage companies evaluate acquisition targets, they conduct extensive due diligence on legal liabilities and ongoing disputes. The Refresco lawsuit represented exactly the kind of financial uncertainty and operational chaos that makes companies toxic to potential buyers. The same aggressive scaling that was supposed to attract acquisition offers from Coca-Cola or Pepsi had instead created a legal and financial mess that made Prime essentially untouchable in the acquisition market. This legal battle didn't just hurt their finances, it eroded any investor confidence Prime had left. As Prime's financial troubles mounted, health professionals began systematically dismantling the brand's core claims about superior hydration. These weren't casual internet critics. These were nutrition experts and medical professionals breaking down Prime's formula and exposing the gaps between Logan and KSI's marketing promises and what the product actually delivered. The Forever Chemicals controversy became a massive blow to Prime's health image. Non-degradable compounds that accumulate in the human body and are linked to serious health concerns were detected in Prime products. For a brand that had built its entire marketing strategy around being a healthier alternative to traditional sports drinks, having these persistent chemicals in their formula was devastating. Parents who had been buying Prime for their kids suddenly faced serious safety concerns about a product they thought was better for their children. When experts analyzed Prime's electrolyte composition, they found fundamental problems with the formula. One expert described Prime as essentially a potassium drink with sucralose, pointing out that this composition doesn't match the electrolytes people actually lose through sweat during exercise. The Lionel Messi conflict delivered another blow to Prime's celebrity endorsement strategy. The feud with arguably the world's most famous athlete generated headlines for all the wrong reasons, undermining Prime's ability to leverage celebrity partnerships that had been central to their marketing approach from the beginning. Prime's aggressive competitor bashing, particularly their constant attacks on Gatorade, started backfiring spectacularly. Instead of making Prime appear confident and superior, this approach came across as desperate and unprofessional. Potential corporate buyers prefer brands that compete on merit rather than through social media drama. Medical professionals began recommending against Prime for children, directly contradicting the brand's core targeting strategy. One medical professional stated they wouldn't recommend Prime for a child's lunch, raising serious questions about whether the product was appropriate for the younger demographic that drove Prime's early success. These health controversies amplified all the negative publicity Prime was already receiving from declining sales and legal troubles. When Prime's core value proposition as a healthier, more effective hydration option got systematically challenged by medical and nutrition experts, the brand's credibility collapsed completely. Prime had built everything on claims of superiority over established competitors, but when those claims got exposed as marketing hype rather than scientific fact, consumers lost trust in everything else the brand represented. But the health controversies only highlighted a deeper problem that had been plaguing Prime from the very beginning. Major beverage giants avoid brands without a clear niche. Prime's identity crisis was its own undoing. Throughout Prime's entire existence, nobody could answer the most basic question about the brand. Who was this product actually for? Prime's marketing suggested it was for serious athletes who needed proper hydration during workouts, while simultaneously targeting children and teenagers through Logan and KSI's young audience, and also trying to position themselves as a casual, everyday drink for regular consumers. This scattershot approach meant Prime never developed a strong identity with any specific group of customers. The targeting confusion created massive problems for Prime's acquisition potential. Successful beverage brands know exactly who buys their product and why. Gatorade owns the serious athlete market. Red Bull dominates the energy drink space. Body Armor carved out the premium sports drink category. Prime tried to be all things to all people, which meant they weren't the best choice for anyone. Major beverage companies looking at acquisition targets want brands with clear, defensible market positions, not products with identity crises. Prime's complete dependence on Logan Paul and KSI prevented the brand from ever becoming a standalone entity that could survive without its founders. Every marketing campaign, every product launch, every brand decision revolved around these two influencers. This wasn't just heavy celebrity endorsement. This was a brand that literally couldn't exist without Logan and KSI's constant promotion. Corporate buyers recognized this dependency as a massive risk factor that made Prime unsuitable for acquisition. When you compare Prime to successful beverage acquisitions, the differences become obvious. Body Armor demonstrated the power of strategic partnerships when they achieved a 180% sales jump after entering Coca-Cola's bottling system. This patient approach created lasting value because Body Armor had proven their worth beyond marketing hype. The Lunchly launch demonstrated how unfocused Prime's strategy had become. Instead of concentrating on building their hydration beverage into a category leader, Logan and KSI diluted their attention by expanding into meal kits. This move confused consumers about what Prime actually represented and diverted resources away from the core product that was supposed to attract acquisition offers. When the initial hype finally faded, Prime discovered they had nothing substantial underneath to support their brand. Without Logan and KSI's constant promotion and social media buzz, Prime was just another hydration drink competing in an oversaturated market. Logan Paul's billion-dollar dreams through Prime are effectively over. The brand that was supposed to attract acquisition offers from Coca-Cola or Pepsi now sits abandoned on clearance shelves, a complete failure of the influencer business model.